Talk to me about prioritizing self-care in your life and what your journey's been like with that.
So, back in 2006, I was launched on a very unusual process, very spontaneous, a lot of change, a lot of weird stuff. And part of that was really detoxing, as you were talking about, some of that old stuff, the old programs started to come through, and that became my life. And this is how I work with my clients. So self-care became a survival tool. Like I needed it just to move through the day, and soon realized that not only was it a survival tool, but it actually is an evolutionary tool. To take care of ourselves, to love ourselves, is to own the landscape that we come in here in this reality with, and to commit to making this as healthy and loving as possible. And in that, I can contribute to the whole.
Yes. And we talk about this so much, but I love the way you said that, because it's all encompassing of what we're worthy of taking that time. And two, it affects how we show up in the world and how we want to show up for our people, our relationships, the things that we're passionate about. So I love how you spoke to that. Really powerful. Talk to me about confidently setting boundaries, healthy boundaries, not walls, but those healthy things that you need in your life. Talk to me about your boundaries journey.
Yeah, we have for thousands of years had a tremendous fear of abandonment. And so in the past, setting a boundary actually felt threatening because we needed to plug into the external world and what they thought we should be first in order to feel safe. And now, especially women are going through this big reversal. And so we need to shed a lot of the messages of threat if somebody else doesn't approve of me. We got to shed all of those stories and those programs. So confidence in boundaries it doesn't come immediately. It comes when we really bring that fear of disapproval, of rejection, of abandonment into focus. We really see how that shows up in thought and feeling. We recognize that this is an old program that actually doesn't need to be our reality. We can shift that. We can change that. We can transform that. But we need to see it fully and go, oh, there you are. You are terrified that they're not going to agree with you, or terrified that you're going to say no and they're going to reject you. So we need to see that fear, recognize that actually it's not speaking a truth, that we don't need to believe it. And then we bring in different energy, which is a new thought process, a supportive feeling into the fear, and then a new behavior that's going to then assert a boundary, practice saying no, for example. And we might shake a little bit and we might be a little bit frightened, but if we support ourselves and take care of ourselves, we then build the familiarity and the safety, which all it is safety. Yep. We build the safety into setting those boundaries over and over again, and ergo the confidence kind of pops out.
Yeah. No, I love what you talk about. If you got it, so many times we treat our thoughts and these old narratives as truth, and we have to dispel what is true from what is not true. And then, because the reality is there are some be there will have a harder time receiving these shifts from us than others. And thinking enough of yourself that we like, you know what? One, I'll be patient because this is a new way of presenting myself, and it might take a few reiterations of that. Two, over time, if these people just aren't okay with it, they're not for me. They're probably not people I need to be giving this kind of time to. I need to be surrounded.
Asking of self to reassert more boundaries, even.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So I love how you set that up. That's so good. When did you mentioned 2006 is a pivotal time. Talk to me about when you got here with this. Has this been a place? Talk to me about your evolution of getting to this space of feeling like this is how I need to proceed.
In 2006?
Well, just in time. You mentioned that earlier, but when was the time in your life that it's like, I need to start approaching my life this way? I've got some healing that needs to be done. I need to change some narratives.
So I think it sort of, there was this process of big change. It was a lot of energy moving through and clearing out those old programs. And then eventually, it didn't take long. It was a couple of years before I went, oh, this is inevitable. This is what I have to walk on. I need to make this my creative process, not just a victim of, there's big change happening.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So I needed to own it and make it a real part of what I want, my own creative potential. What did I want to create my reality?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was just and so as that understanding grew, then my idea of what I needed to own, how much I needed to own, how much I could own in my reality kept growing and growing and growing.
Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think as we unpack these layers and make room and we start feeling safe, more things expose themselves. Yes. But we got to make room for it, and we got to get comfortable sitting in the uncomfortable. Taking care of our emotional health and mental health as much as our physical health, because they are all tied together. We know that. So talk to me about your journey with that and making those connections.
So because they're all connected, they all roll out. Like for me to take care of my emotional health includes, I got to move a lot. Mm-hmm. I got to breathe a lot, and I got to sit still a lot. Mm-hmm. So all of those then create within the physical body room to then get into the emotional body to start shifting and moving and uncovering our repressed emotions. Yes. I have to put nutritious food in my body if I want to deal with the anxiety and the depression, or deal with the anger, which is one of my things. I have a long line of women with lots of anger, so I have to take care of my liver. Yes. I got to be detoxing all the time, right? To let that liver constantly purge. Yeah. So to take care of my physical body allows me then to facilitate deeper work into my emotional body. Okay. Which then allows me to access my emotional body more easily if I know my physical body's feeling taken care of. Yeah. My energy body's being taken care of. Then I have an infrastructure here that says when that really uncomfortable feeling comes up and is ready to go, I've got this. I can hold this space. I am taken care of because I've been taking care of myself very well. So I have a nervous system that feels cared for. I can go, okay, we can go in there. We can do this. We can feel that awful thing. It can come through because we know we're safe. We've created a safe reality to allow the old stuff to now come out freely without me stepping in there with an anxious nervous system or unsafe nervous system that's going to stop my healing. So all of that foundation is necessary for those emotions to move freely, for me to feel the difficult old stuff that's buried down there and is now ready to go, oh, well, actually, this doesn't reflect this reality anymore. You don't need me anymore, or we're done here, right? And can come through it and move out.
Yeah, I love that. And so to come back to, you talked about generations of angry women, and you talk about ancient traumas. Talk to me about that piece of it. And when did that become a reality for you? Because this is really important. I mean, there are studies that if your mother carrying you in the womb is having X experiences, it is passed on from the womb. And if you've got generations of that going on, my word. So when did you realize that first, I guess, of that reality?
I mean, I think it all starts to build and you get little clicks as you go. But there were, I recognized quickly, one, that we are in a layered reality. This is a very layered reality, right? Because we are carrying those thousands of years of stories and programs, particularly of fear. And I honed in on the fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, which is all the reality of separation, right? Of not feeling connected and therefore not safe. So we live in a very layered reality. And because I was releasing, transforming on a daily basis and still do, experiences that had nothing to do with anything that had gone on in this lifetime. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many battles I think I've died in, and how many children I've lost, and I don't have kids, and how many, it just kept, these things that my mind could not even manage. So it had to shut down in order for my body to allow these things to move through. These are experiences that were not part of my reality. And so,
sure.
while I don't visualize, thankfully, for a lot of these things, because if I did, I think I'd be, but I feel them. And then, I would be very discerning about who I might bring in to validate. Is this really happening? Am I feeling something truly that is not part of this reality for sure? Is this, am I crazy? Right. So, constantly checking in with that. But there are so many experiences that really aren't part. And as well with my clients, when they allow themselves to surrender, when it's safe enough to do so, they really pull out stuff that has nothing to do with any experience of this. And a lot of the fears that they have and anxieties and angers really don't have much to do with what they experienced in childhood at all. It doesn't come out of something that's experiential, but it's there. It exists. And I think, this deep, deep fear of rejection that we have, that I think we're born into, and it activates in different ways and in different severities. I don't think that that's just what we get when we're a child because we had a very dysfunctional or unstable childhood. I think we come in with it and it shows itself fully and get activated fully or in a big, big way when we're confronted with that external environment that reminds us. It's really scary when somebody rejects us.
Oh, wow.
So I don't think I don't think we are raised that way, all of us. I think that it's a program that most of us, I would say, have within us, and it gets activated to different degrees.
Well, and I think what I love about that explanation is I know women who are like, I had a great upbringing. I don't have, my parents weren't perfect, but they did a great job. I felt safe. It was a giving, loving, kind environment. Why do I have this angst within me? And I think that goes a long way in explaining, again, when you're talking about generation after generation, of these things being passed through the womb and carried out into your life, that is like, oh, okay, well, it's got to go somewhere, and
thousands of years. I mean, we go through thousands and thousands of years, probably millions, actually. It's a not a parallel example. Millions, though, from going from water to land. Well, there's going to be an impact of living in terror, living with others that, in an environment that feels terrorizing all of the time.
Right.
We're going to inherit and hold and glue on, various survival skills, coping strategies.
Yes.
They could be right? So those are going to be in there and programmed in a deep way. I just think that right now there's a wonderful opportunity and beautiful energy and awareness coming in where we can change some really old programs.
Yeah, and just break down that generational trauma, and start anew. It's so powerful. Thank you for diving into that with me. Talk to me about how we can support ourselves and other women in living unapologetically. I mean, it's such a path to that, and how you've taken what you've learned to help others with it. So talk to me about your journey with that, when this became something that, oh, this is really great. Oh, I can help other people with this. Because you've got a long education background. You've had a lot of schooling and a lot of different types of modalities and how you've approached it. So talk to me about that kind of transformation as you've had you've applied this stuff personally.
As I've applied these stuff personally, how did it end up being shared with others?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, that was because my process, like I came from a very academic background, a very political background, right? As I said,
okay, yeah,
as you mentioned. So for me to move into the healing modalities, and I work with the subtle energy body. Mm-hmm. So I work in that metaphysical, beyond the physical realms with my clients as well. Yeah, it took many years of shedding shame in order, because I was not going to get the approval of the old communities. I would have been kicked out of the university.
This is not what Western medicine or traditional education wants to hear about. I mean, that's why it's so hard to find a doctor that can help you in the ways you need to be helped, because this is not what's accepted. It's just not. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, it is shamed.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of rejection to approaching mainstream institutions, empowered institutions in this reality, in this very physical reality, approaching them with an alternative. It is shamed and it is oppressed and suppressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to release years and years and years of my own shame in order to show up as my authentic self. And the more that happened, the more I was capable and felt grounded and trusted my goals in showing up to assist others. But the truth is when you assist others, you assist yourself, because we're all mirrors. And so truly to sit in that humility and that gratitude feeds your own evolution. And it just so happens it feeds everybody else's, which is great.
No, that connectivity is powerful. It's very powerful. And we don't tap into it enough, especially as women. We as a collective are so much stronger together when we find those connections. And I think that's so important that you speak to that, see that, and help people see those connections too. And it is a lot to do that. And so, that really goes back to like the next couple talking points we're going to talk about. First of all, setting and coming back to your why and your values and everything you do. This is something you had to like get to a space of like shedding the shame and be like, no, this is a value of mine. And I am not going to be deterred by these people that are basically, really threatened by a different idea, or they're just so locked in ego-wise, they just can't see their way out to anything else. So, talk to me about that framing of your why and your value in this as you've done this work.
Okay, I'm hoping this will come out clearly, because you just hit on so many points and I have like fireworks going off.
Hit them on.
So, I think what you're talking about is that other people's potential. I really wasn't shamed. It was my fear of being shamed, but you knew it would be. Like I kept myself from even going into the possibility.
Well, there's too many examples of it to not know it.
It's fairly clear. It's fairly clear.
Yeah.
But what I was, thinking or was protecting myself from, the reason we shame another is because of our own shame and our own fear. Mm-hmm. And we don't see it within us. So we project it out into another.
Yes.
And so this very layered reality is, it's very hidden. And those who are walking the so-called higher path, there is so much in there that is hidden, and we don't see the subtle and not so subtle layers of fear and shame and rage and jealousy that we deny and suppress and repress. And that is how we've been living and needed to live for thousands of years. So the fundamental principle, which is two of them and they're the same, is in order to connect, you got to see all your stuff. You got to see all your stuff. Right?
Yep.
And you've got to be willing and open to going in there and going, wow, yeah, that is actually in there. I pull that stuff. I do that.
Right.
That dark stuff exists in me. And if I can bring it in, own it, and love it and own it, then I don't create the world that I had to, so desperately protect myself from because I was so afraid of being shamed and oppressed.
Yes.
I don't have to keep recreating those same old things, because if I am truly committed to creating something, more connecting, then I have to get the things that disconnect out of the way. And those things that disconnect are in me. I can't do it for other people, but those things that disconnect me from the world, fear, shame, rage, jealousy, greed, I've got to see them willingly, openly, lovingly, in order to create a new reality of connection. Those are my commitments.
Yes. Yeah. You just nailed embracing layers right there. People, there's your masterclass and embracing your layers. That's it. And that's it. And when you're able to do that, you know your value, you know your why, you understand, and it becomes a non-negotiable, I think, for you when you understand yourself and love yourself and accept yourself in that way. I love the way you unfolded that and allows you, our next talking point is living out of your own expectations versus others. This works that.
Same thing.
This makes that possible.
Correct.
How freeing has that been to get to that point?
Yeah, before 16, 17 years ago and now is just there's a different human here. There's a different human. And that, it doesn't mean I don't have, fear that shows up, and my anger, as I said, shows up, and
absolutely
resistance shows up. It's there, but because I am committed to seeing all of it, which ensures more and more that it is not directing my life.
Right.
That me that's underneath this, myself, your higher self, your original self, whatever you want to call it, that I'm connecting more and more to that. And in that path, out of that comes freedom. Because I'm not locked into this really old programmed layered history of pain, because that's what our history is mostly made of. I am unlocking myself from that big layered programmed reality, and now I can live in another higher, other layers of higher frequency of love and compassion and gratitude and generosity. I can choose those, and that's a tremendous amount of freedom to move through that, and not feel enslaved to the anxieties and the fears and the big freedom, big.
Yeah, and you don't realize how debilitating it is until you live on the other side of it, or even start experiencing a small part of it. Like even just experiencing a little bit of it, and you're like, wait a minute, I'm on to something here.
Correct.
This has great, potential, and you can't go back. I mean, I think that's one of the things I have learned is once you get there, there's no going back. Is just like, nope. It just becomes so, you start feeling like yourself. You're like, and you start feeling like the self that you were meant to be, and not what anybody else's expectations or pressures or generationally, those things you carry, you're able to shed those and get to who you actually are. So powerful. Accepting the layered aspects of ourselves. Is this kind of the thing that drove you to be like, I can help other people with this too? Is that, or what drove you to that? Because you defined accepting layers. Like people, if you want to know what accepting layers means, go back a couple of minutes ago and listen to what Antonia said, because that was it in a nutshell. So I guess two questions. What drove you to be like, I think I can help others with this too, especially with your background. And also just that realization of the unfolding of layers in it with, you're like, wait a minute. So talk to me about your journey and also that next step.
In the beginning, it was almost compulsive, which I often see with my clients. Like after they're doing a bit of work, they move from working in an industry that is very divisive and oppressive, and suddenly they start moving towards careers that are very connecting, whether it's nutrition, or I have a lot of clients now who are becoming psychotherapists, or opening up going into naturopathy, or whatever it is. They start to move into the unifying healing, which is connecting professions. It becomes compulsive. You need to get in there and start to share your wisdoms, but you also develop that. I mean, you understand that it's not all about you, and that that you are fundamentally part of a whole. And so, to commit to the whole is to commit to self, and vice versa. Like there's an intuitive understanding that you are part of something bigger, and that to love that is it becomes fundamental, becomes foundational to who you are. Yeah. So that's what it was for me. It was almost compulsive. I went from, I've always worked in the service industries, but I went from working on I'm going to save the world, which really is about me avoiding my own stuff. Right. So I was yes. Exactly. To, I'm ready now to work one-on-one, which was really about, we're going to go right into the body and start looking at that stuff. And I could do that because I had started to do some of my own work instead of put on the cape and try and do everybody else's work for them. Which is impossible. And it just doesn't work, right? It's another one of avoidance strategies, actually, to go, right? And to see that within you, then you can heal that and go look at yourself in the places that you're really resisting looking at, and bring love to those. Yeah. So once I just stopped, let go of the cape and started to recognize that I'm going to do my own work, then I think I could begin to share, to go into the darker places that I was resisting looking at before. I could go into them within myself, which allowed me to show others how they can go in to those places that they're resisting to see? How do we make it safe enough to activate the very uncomfortable healing process, which is looking at those deeper ancestral layers? It's very uncomfortable. So it's kind of like, here's a cord. I may be one step ahead of you. I'm figuring out how to do this. Follow me, and we're going to go in there together. And we're going to figure out that we can heal by going and sitting in some of the difficult stuff with love and compassion, self-care, etc.
Yeah. And empathy, just, lots of empathy. And I love the community piece of that is like, we don't have to do this alone. We can do this. And we can't, right. I mean, we are wired to be connected to each other. We are wired to be in relationship. And that's where the shift happens. And it happens. And you don't, we talked about this with some other throughout the last couple of years on here a few times, but real shifts happen when you have to start with you and get to a healthy you. And then it goes from there. If you're going to make, and it's those kinds of things. If we do that and we can bring others with us in community to do that as well, those are where the shifts happen. Because if we're all operating from a healthy place, we make better decisions. We work better together. I mean, it's a trickle down effect. And there's so much power in it if you can bring people along, but it's work. It's not, you have to be willing and committed and to be like, I want to be healthy and I'm going to do what I need to do to get there. And I'm going to not allow the fear and the anxiousness and the shame and all of those things and all these emotions are going to come up with it. I mean, we as women are told from very young ages, and this has been transformed over and over generationally about anger being not appropriate for women to feel. Well, that just builds up more anger. You're angry about not being able to be angry. It has a counter effect. And
which is why I do believe that women have a lot of work to do as a whole. Those that are ready, those that want to look at the ancient repressed rage.
Yes.
Because we have been holding it for ourselves, and I believe also holding it for the authorities, whether they're men, mostly men. Our fathers, our partners, our kings. So I think that there's a lot of repressed rage that we've been asked to hold and we've had to hold because it hasn't been safe. And that all needs to be seen and honored and loved so that it can move through.
Yeah. Oh, really well said that. That's beautiful. All part of that layers journey and so powerful when you do it. When you do it. In Living Out Feel, finding empowerment, embracing layers, which you do, that you've done, you help others do. How has this affected your relationship with yourself as well as your relationships with others?
Completely, totally, and entirely affected them. And I'm still exploring how it's affected it because the change has been a constant, actually, for the last 17 years. How I relate to others constantly shifts and changes as well. So I'm consistently exploring new layers of authenticity, new layers of boundaries, new layers of self-compassion. All these things are showing up in new ways very rapidly over the years. And, that presently I can see shifts from last year.
Right.
So, when you start to bring in these really powerful tools, my two top tools are boundaries and self-compassion, right? It's got to be boundaries and self-compassion.
Right.
I mean, I have a lot of clients when they start bringing in these really good practices, wonder where all their friends went. Like they had to let all these people go. And there's a place of loneliness that kicks in because they're like, well, I had to let all this go because I suddenly recognized they didn't see me. I didn't see them. There was not good things happening. And then when we continue to build those tools, that's when the new, more connecting relationships come in. The next layer, the higher vibrational relationships come in, that where we see each other more.
Yes.
Where we create love versus operating out of fear.
Yes.
Where the other is as important as ourselves. Where we negotiate versus try to get what we can.
Right.
So all of these beautiful things unfold when you start to really move yourself through these beautiful practices, higher frequency, higher vibrational practices of self-love and boundaries, and of course, bringing in silence and other lots of beautiful healing modalities. So they're constantly shifting, and the more you do them, the more they're going to shift, but always they will end up being more connecting. Always more connecting.
I love how you talked about the ongoing process of this, because I think many times, and I was guilty of this myself, and I've talked about it many times on here, when I started my own journey of like, I got to dive into this. My life on the outside does not reflect how I'm feeling on the inside, and I need to get to the bones of that. I thought, I'm going to go in, I'm going to start working. I found a therapist that I connected with that was doing practices that I felt like could be helpful. We built trust. I mean, because all those things, you got to trust the person, the people that you're working with. I thought, I'm going to go in for 6 months. I'm going to do these things, and it's all good. And I'm going to move on with my life. That is not how it works when you get into this, because you continue to evolve. You continue to learn. And that's a good thing. I mean, I think we get so many people that get to a certain age in life and they decide, this is where I'm at and I'm not changing, and here I am. And they tend to not be in my experience, not be the most content, enjoyable people to be around. They're very set in their ways. And I've been able to that's really an unfortunate way to live. That goes back to like, you got to be willing to dive in, do the work, be okay with it, and sit in the quiet. You talked about the power of sitting in the quiet. I had the hardest time with this early on. Like after 3 minutes, I was squirming. And now, I could do it for 30 minutes at a time. I can go on a walk in the quiet and just enjoy the nature. I don't have to have a podcast or music or something playing in my head.
Right.
I'm okay sitting with it, because that's where stuff unfolds. You got to get quiet so the stuff at least in my experience, but the importance of quiet, and we have such a hard time with it. And do you think, and I think it goes back to the fear and the feeling, and it feels overwhelming. Would you agree with that?
I think that when we get quiet, that's when the stuff that we haven't been paying attention to comes to the surface and starts to bubble. Yeah. We start to give it space because we're not keeping it suppressed through all of our avoidance and denial. Yeah. Yeah. So when we move that aside, now we have we create channels for all that stuff to bubble up. And it doesn't feel very good. Feels kind of scary. Feels very disruptive. Feels disturbing and distressing, and we don't want to be with it because we've been teaching ourselves not to be with it. Mm-hmm. And so, we're going to have a reaction, which we always do, which is us going to get up and go do a shopping list because that feels better. Yes. Right. And so there not something that necessarily should feel great. I don't think. There are moments when we should be restorative and relaxing, but meditation itself is an openness to whatever shows up. Whatever shows up. Yeah. And it's most often going to be uncomfortable. Yeah. Because we have layers and layers and layers of discomfort. Yes. So the more we actually intend to go, I'm here to allow it to flow and to move and to breathe, then the more that stuff's going to flow and move and breathe. And we're going to keep moving through those layers into the next reality. Yeah, absolutely. But it's not, you can't heal those things you're not aware of. And so be patient with yourselves, ladies, and allow yourself the space to do this. I promise you it's better if you do that. And Antonia is, another powerful example of that. And the power within that, when you allow yourself and give yourself and see yourself as worthy and valuable to do that for yourself, it changes everything. So good. We are down to the rapid fire. Name 5 activities that nourish you. Meditation. No. So number 1 would be meditation. Being in silence. Doesn't have to be meditation, but just being in silence without people, without a lot of activity. Of course, nature is fundamental. Really healthy food is fundamental. And really good movement. Like I'm a yoga person. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love how you with, brought in all those important things, how we feel our body, how we move our body, giving ourselves quiet, because that quiet can be restful too. If we're just, if you're not letting your mind just be, and that can be really restorative. You just dealt with so many different things about feeding all those parts of us that are necessary. I love that. And 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Motivated, inspired, a little bit more peaceful, more connected, and what's a 5th one? I don't know. More loving, always.
Always. That's such a good one. All right, Antonia, this is all going to be in the resources page on our website, embracinglayers.com. Listeners, don't worry. But I want to give Antonia some time to talk a little bit more about where we can find you, how people can work with you, just what your processes are and what you offer.
So I work one-on-one, although I'm not taking new clients. And more I'm developing, and I'm actually down in Mexico right now looking for space to go and create more group work.
Okay.
That's where it happens, right? Is when we're in groups, relationship.
Yeah.
So I work in group work. Now I historically do meditation retreats, silent meditation retreats, and yoga retreats, plant medicine retreats that I bring in with the silence and the meditation. So sort of a breadth of different modalities that I bring into a contained space. So that is probably the biggest part of the future, is creating group healing. And then I put reflections on podcasts. I have a podcast called Dismantling the Third Dimension. And so people can go there and just listen to more of some of the concepts that have come through today. And I think that's pretty much it. There's an online, I have some video modules, which once again are just reflections in order to guide and lead people into seeing themselves, how to bring in the power of seeing, which is awareness, which is consciousness, which transforms. How to activate that, how to see oneself deeply, profoundly, because we live in a reality we don't see. We're very hidden from ourselves. I think we're much, 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 much bigger than our egoic mind thinks we are. So to activate new ways of seeing, I think, are fundamental.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I love, you talk about this some on your website, but you use so many modalities I think people have used anciently over time before we had access to medicine. You're getting back to what worked for people for thousands of years. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, actually, the Ayurveda, because I'm an Ayurvedic counselor and I bring into the Ayurveda came to me in a dream, the only dream that ever actually talked to me about cool stuff. And I was told, they just said Ayurveda. And I said, what? And they said Ayurveda. And I said, okay. And I woke up, I'd never heard the word before. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And the only school for Ayurveda in Canada was 4 subway stops away. And so off I went and started my Ayurvedic program.
Well, that's nice. Well, that worked.
Crazy. And then came the yoga, the meditation, all the ancient healing practices that are very connecting and bring in a sense of balance, right?
Right.
These are all really powerful tools. Yeah,
absolutely. All right. Thank you so much for sharing that. And like we said, that will all be on our website, everybody. You can check that out. Check out the podcast. All those things will be listed and linked. Antonia, thank you so much for your time today. I've been so looking forward to our conversation. I'm so appreciative of the work you do and how it's transformative and how you share it with others and bring, these access points for people to come in and do this healing, powerful ways that can really change your life and how you see yourself and how you show up in the world as your best, truest self. So thank you so much for the work that you do. I hope you feel, audience, that you feel really like, all right, I like what I'm hearing. This feels like something I can connect to, and go to those resources, but take some time to sit with yourself this week. Be okay being uncomfortable with that. We've talked about that on this podcast before with different guests, but you got to get okay with being a little bit uncomfortable and in a safe space where you've got the room and to do this because you're worth it. And the world, if we're really going to make change and transform this into a place that we want to be, operating as people that we want to be, this is where the work starts of just getting comfortable, unpacking those layers and into healing, whatever that route looks like for you. And Antonia offers a great amount of resources. So appreciative of that. But feel encouraged and go sit with yourself quietly this week and see what comes up, and know that there's many resources out there to help you. All right. Thank you again, Antonia. Loved our time together today. Podcast audience, take good care of yourselves and have a great week.